Are we live?
Live. We're live, right. Yes.
All right. First case wrap-up, is that right?
Yes. First live stream following the successful debut of the case.
Yes. All right. Kirk Minihane here. Steve Robinson, my producer. I guess we're just going to – this is the first one we're doing. So I guess we're doing one each episode. Thanks to Taser for sponsoring the case and this. So, I mean, I guess, there's is there a live chat feed that's going on as well, or –
yes,
there's a questions. Okay, people have questions. Maybe we'll go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I'll pay attention to the chat, and if there's some good questions, I'll pull something up and read it to you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think episode 2 will be up tomorrow at about at noon. Episode 2 will drop at noon, and we're looking forward to it. I think it's better than the first one. I think Steve does as well. I don't know if you have anything you want to address, Steve, for the first episode. Anything that's worth talking about? I mean, obviously the feedback was great. It was interesting for us, and for me anyway, in a way. We started working on it in November, and we kind of went away from Brockton, sort of from a story perspective, for so long. We've been to South Carolina so many times. It was almost interesting to go back to where we started. It was essentially like we were starting over. We had the interview with Yvette we did 2 of them, and that was November? They were both in November?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I mean, it must have been early November, I think.
I think it was like mid, and then because I think we actually did one before Thanksgiving and one after. So the second one might have even been the first week in December. We were pushing at that point. It was getting cold, but we did it outside. It was really still in the middle of COVID madness. So we did it inside, rather outside, spread out, and Steve set up it. I think to date, other than the interviews we did with Bob Ward and Maureen Boyle in studio, unless I'm forgetting somebody else in studio. I think that's it. That's really the only traditional.
We've got some by phone.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yeah. So that's the closest to like a traditional newsy. That's the way we thought we were going to do interviews at first. Steve hauled all this shit, all this camera stuff, and put it in his car, and we drove out sort of to the Brockton area. Took a look at the area where Jen went missing, and went to see Yvette, and Steve set up the cameras, and you see the way it looks in the interviews. If you've seen them, like we're kind of far away, and it looks professional. And that was it. After that, we realized, I think the second time down at Wall Hall, we were having dinner, and you were like, you know what? We just need our phones. Like we don't need anything else.
But the iPhones are spectacular. I mean, I kind of realized that when you on the first trip when you got down to Walhalla and you had to do some digging around without me. And I was just listening to the voice recorder audio quality, and I was like, "This is really good." Like even from a distance. So I would say probably like 70% of the audio that people will hear going forward was just on an iPhone.
Yeah, unless we're doing studio interviews over the phone. But yeah, I think the other thing is it's just not the way we do things, especially down there in South Carolina. And you heard some of it, you'll hear some of it, I should say, in episode 2. And you'll hear more of it going forward. It's just not possible to talk to some of these people and be like, hey, can you give us 20 minutes, a half hour? Steve needs to set the camera. We need some lighting. Can you talk in this microphone? It doesn't. We're going so fast. We're talking to people who might not want to talk to us in a couple of minutes, might want to take off on us, might be nervous. So it's also way more, not intimate, but you know what I mean? Like it's just more conversational if you're holding a phone rather than, it doesn't feel as big and as professional. I think it does, tend to get people to open up a little more that way versus the traditional way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people would get really nervous when you start setting up cameras. Like, I mean, there's already a long list of people who have refused to be interviewed or declined an interview for this podcast. And I think if you whip out a camera, then people start getting really anxious about that.
Right, which I get. I mean, I know, I totally understand that. But yeah, so the first episode, I mean, again, we just sort of set the scene. We let you know what happened the night. We think that the reconstructed night that Jen went missing, which I think is good. And then, sort of introduce some other characters as well. Episode 2, I think the second half of episode 1 with Ann Desmond and reacting to it and then leading into the tease for episode 2 kind of, if the first half of episode 1 is like 40 miles an hour, that felt like it was about 70 miles an hour. And I think episode 2 is even faster. And I think at that point, like, just hold on, because after episode 2, you're going to think, will this get crazier? Episode 3, yes. Episode 4, yes. Like, there's just,
Yeah, I was thinking about it today, and the possibly the craziest most eccentric person in this entire narrative that hasn't even come up yet and won't. And
you know
won't.
you're talking about episode 3 or no?
Yes, I'm talking about episode 3.
Yeah, we'll have some interaction with that person, this weekend and more. But I think I think that when you listen to it going forward, I'll be curious for the feedback. The feedback for episode 1 was great. Hopefully the episode 2 feedback is just as good. We both think the show's better than episode 1 even, and I think episode 3 is going to be interesting. But for just to give you guys a little inside baseball, if you don't listen to our regular show every day or 3 days a week on Barstool, I mean we are people want to see the hairline? I'll give you the hairline. I don't care. Episode, the way, like for us now, it's just going to be week in, week out, just a sprint to finish every week. I mean, we got a little bit of time this afternoon, and tonight we have some time to sort of, but I think going forward, it's just every week is going to, because things are going to change. I mean, you saw the reaction episode 1. We're sitting here thinking, I have episode 3 already outlined to a large degree, but who knows? We didn't know from episode 1 to episode 2, plus the trailer,
Yeah. We got some questions coming in the text. You want me to fill those out there?
Sure. Good reaction to my take there, Steve. Go ahead.
Well, sorry, Mike. Mike.
That's fine. Go ahead. Yes. Oh, go ahead.
You're
hosting. Go ahead.
Where was Kristen the night Jennifer went missing? Why won't she talk?
Well, we addressed where she was, right? I mean, she was. I don't think anybody disagrees that she was in her home. It is weird. It's just weird from a natural, when you look at the story, that she hasn't talked since and they were best friends. I tend to be, there are people in Jen's life who are less sympathetic about it, and I understand that than I am. When it comes to Kristen, I look at Kristen, I just don't believe these 15, 16, 17-year-old kids had some master scheme that kept some secret, like it for, whatever, I just, I don't believe that. I think Kristen, we're going to talk more about her in a later episode, but I do think that she has her own demons and her own issues and stuff. And I think that we've talked to plenty of people, and that plays a part in it. I mean, I will say that we talked to Kristen, right? We did. We went up to her apartment and talked to her. What's that? What'd you say, Steve?
I said, yeah, we went and met her.
Yeah.
I mean, she was nice. She was nice.
She was nice. It was a very brief conversation. So, but yeah, I don't think she's I don't think she's a suspect in it. I just don't. We've spent a lot of time on this. I don't buy into that theory. We'll talk about it in a later episode, and I think, but yeah, go ahead.
So Things Take Time wants to know, are you guys worried about the backlash from some of the people in the podcast, and what measures have we taken to prevent that?
Not really. I think we've been very upfront with, everybody. I think if people hear what they don't like in an episode, they may come out and say that, we didn't know this was a pot. Everybody knew. We made it clear to everybody. We have spoken to people close to, well, you'll learn more about this Kevin Mailer in episode 2. There are people who are like, hey, I don't want my voice heard talking about this guy. A couple of people, and we said, fine. We're not here to make you uncomfortable. Okay, you agree to talk. We appreciate that, but you don't want your voice in the podcast. We're not going to put your voice in the podcast. Now, if it's somebody who we talked to in the past who wants to, who we think is a suspect or we think did some bad things, and they knew we were recording them or knew we were having a conversation and subsequently say, hey, we don't want that. Well, that's a different conversation. There are people that we want to protect, and there are people who we feel like need the truth to be told about. And those are different things.
And I would also say that as a result of your experience with Somerville Mayor Joe Curtatone, we are intimately familiar with the recording laws and have followed them diligently, whether we're in South Carolina or in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and I think there are people who are not going to like what they hear about them. 2 people in particular. One, is obviously Mailer, and then another one's a woman you'll hear about more in episode 3. And she's already going at us, but I mean, we'll talk about her. I think her record speaks for herself, but we have followed that law to a T, to the letter.
There's lots of people wondering about the motorcycle theory.
I mean, we talked about a lot in episode 1. It just doesn't add up. Nobody we talked to, and I'll say this, like I said, Ann Desmond was very nice to us. There were things that Ann Desmond said about Jen's family, specifically Jen's mom, that we left out, that were rough. So, I would say, nobody believes the motorcycle theory. Nobody.
Yeah, and it is. I think a lot of the feedback I got was about Anne in particular, and just that the lead theory was this kind of crazy thing that people who aren't even really familiar with the case wouldn't accept. Like, no one's buying that theory, but here you got a veteran police officer who's running the investigation, and that's what they actually believe about it. It's still wild.
Yeah, no, not believable. No, and we interviewed her twice. We talked to her. She called us back a couple of times, and she doesn't want to be part of it anymore, and that's fine. She's not going to be. We don't really need her. But we just wanted to illustrate how troubling it was that for the first 10 years, essentially, this was sort of the working theory and the lead detective on this case. And it seems like, to her words, not ours, all she did was go up the street, which sounds like Rice's Market, ask a couple of friends. And we haven't talked to maybe one person who talked to her, but not a lot of people who have talked to her. So I'm not really sure who exactly she talked to. I'm not sure exactly how she ended up with this motorcycle theory. Nobody we've talked to has espoused it, so I don't know.
Another question, this one I guess is about the Brockton police. Are they not cooperating for obvious reasons because they botched the initial investigation into Jennifer?
No, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think our understanding is that we've talked to some people in the Brockton Police Department, sort of off the record, and they've been very nice and helpful. But I think, it seems to me it goes higher than that. When you talk to them, it seems like it's more of a higher issue. Like, when we talked to a couple people, they kicked it up and said, "Hey, this goes up to the district attorney. Like, they don't want to talk about this because in their mind, this is still a breathing, living case." So, fine. Like, the people we talked, we had a very good conversation with somebody within the Brockton Police Department, off the record, at the Brockton Police Department, actually, for probably a good hour and a half. Very nice. Gave us some information. Is also pointing us in some directions. And I don't get the sense, Steve, you might feel different. Like, I don't get the sense right now that the Brockton Police Department is super vigilant about the case. But B, I also think, like, they're not the kind of people, like, if we can help randomly, if we can get any closer, they're going to be happy to help us out, I think. Like, I don't, it doesn't feel like there's any tension.
Yeah, I would say like neutral to positive. And it's not just the Brockton police, because the Massachusetts State Police are also involved in this. And on 2 separate occasions, they've denied our FOIA requests for public records that would be helpful in this.
Right. That's true. Right.
And we're in the process of appealing that rejection. But again, what it's about is, for the longest time, Jennifer's case was closed. And it was recently reopened, and because it's reopened, they can't release any documents. So it could just be a policy thing as opposed to a lack of cooperation.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead. We'll take a couple more.
Let's see. Is there anyone brought up in episode 1 you didn't get to talk to who you really wanted to?
I don't remember.
I would say there's a couple. I would say Kristen is somebody we really want to talk to.
We did talk to her. We just didn't have a long.
Yeah, but I mean, we would have liked.
Right.
We would have liked to have a long
for
her.
For sure.
There were some people like Walter Scully who initially didn't want to talk, but he came around and he talked to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was very good. For us, like, what's that? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say there was another person who talked with us and may have seen some of the events that night, but didn't want his voice included in the podcast. But the information we got from him mm-hmm. was still ultimately useful, I think.
Yeah, I think, obviously Wombolt was a tough one to get. We went up there. It was actually the one time it wasn't me or you or just me or just you. It was me and my brother Ryan. We were up in upstate Vermont. And that was kind of an interesting day. We went up there. I don't know if we we probably get too into it in the podcast, right? I don't remember I don't remember what episode we have versus what we deleted, but we drove up there and we went by Wombolt's house, his sort of trailer. He wasn't there. We went and got something to eat, and then we went back again. He still wasn't there, but we had seen a car had been there, and he had one of those outdoor garages with a cover, And we saw that it had been from there, so we realized he had been there. We still weren't totally sure, Steve, if you remember, it was address or not. So we figured out that it was his address at that point. We got lucky and found it was his address. We went right across the street to where there was a sort of self-storage thing and kind of waited for a little bit. And then he showed up, and he was like, I thought it was going to be one of those things where he was like, I don't want to talk to you, because in the past he had, been nervous about interviews. Like there's sort of a famous story about with the PIs and the officers that he had kind of hidden the attic initially. He was a quirky guy, but I think he was the hardest find for us, I think, of people we've actually found. I mean, obviously we're still looking for others, but he was a weird one.
Somebody wants to know, did we interview Kevin Crow?
Well, we tried. You emailed with him, correct?
Yeah, we emailed with him. He gave us his recollection, which wasn't very firm. He said that, upon being questioned by police, he did recall, and this was many years later, he did recall, Jennifer and Diane coming over to that house on Montello Street for a party that night. But he wasn't comfortable talking with us, and right. His recollection didn't seem real firm. And again, I mean, it really is, I think, a remarkable achievement to have reconstructed that night as well as we did.
Oh, a remarkable achievement for us, you're saying?
Yes, I am. I am saying that, given how cloudy people's memories will be, and that it was 30 years ago,
Yeah, well, I mean, yes. And I agree. I saw something about Wombolt too. Is it weird that he got randomly sick? We'll talk more about, I think, Wombolt later on. We do an episode, an episode or two about other people who are interesting to us. So, I think, and you'll find out in episode 2, when we're down in South Carolina, we talk about another missing, another woman, a girl who went missing, woman who went missing. And this was far more recent than Jen. Jen was in 89. This woman, Faith Roach, went missing in 2019. And we had, 50 times more information about Jen in 1989 than we did about Faith, 100 times more about the actual day that she went missing. So yeah. Good. We'll take one more, Steve. And by the way, 7:50, way before the hour.
Does the timeline and episode number still stand, 8 episodes and 1 per week, or might things get accelerated?
No, I think no. It's definitely not going to be accelerated. I don't think we can do 2 episodes in a week. I don't think that's going to happen.
I think we're going as fast as we can.
I think if something absolutely crazy happens, we would do an emergency show where it was essentially almost a version of this. We laid out the information without, just talking, no editing. No, if something crazy happens, we need to react that day. Short of that, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to be 8 episodes. It's certainly not going to be less. But yeah, I would say, I think 8 episodes makes sense right now, don't you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it does. Yeah. Especially, leaving, episode 7 and 8, I think are still very much in the up in the air. And a lot of it will depend on,
right. What happens between now and then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's, well, let's talk about Taser first of all. Thanks to Taser for presenting this and presenting the case. The Taser Pulse Plus is a non-lethal. Do you have the Taser with you, Steve, or not?
No, it's in the studio right now. We'll have it.
Don't say that. Yeah. Self-protection device is small and lightweight enough to carry with you, your glove compartment or purse, powerful enough to incapacitate an attacker. And I think what's interesting about Taser is it's why it's such a great sponsor is, whether it's a daughter or your girlfriend or your spouse or your best friend or your sister or whoever, whoever, just if you're just a single woman. This can be very helpful in a very scary world. It's why it's a great partnership. And,
it's one of the safest ways. It's one of the safest ways for someone who isn't comfortable using other alternative methods, whether it's a gun or something.
Right.
It's one of the safest ways to just have a little bit of security. And we've demonstrated, we've tested the Taser Pulse Plus in the studio.
We both have. Yeah.
I would say highly effective, super, super easy to use. You don't have to be worried about if you're not familiar with tasers. Yeah, it's so easy to use. Anybody could use it.
Absolutely. The Taser Pulse Plus uses an electrical charge, as Steve says, to immobilize attackers for up to 30 seconds. It allows you time to escape, and it sends an emergency dispatch to your GPS location. It's features like taser-assisted targeting, emergency dispatch. Again, upon firing, then it sends that. Protect yourself and your family with Taser Pulse Plus self-defense product. Taser Pulse Plus is available without a permit in most U.S. states. Get the Taser Pulse Plus at taser.com with the promo code THECASE. Promo code THECASE, 15% off now with Taser, TASER.com, promo code THECASE. Last question I saw was, are all episodes going to be about 45 minutes? Probably. I think tomorrow's episode's a little bit longer, though, right?
It is. Yeah, it's a little bit longer. I think it's upwards of 50 minutes at this point.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't think, I've been saying all along that I think people are going to, if it's an hour and 20, hour 30, I think at some point people just check out. And I want this to be one listen, one sitting, bam, go back and listen to it again. Because I think you need to listen to it once or twice. Every episode now, especially as it gets moving. And now we've got tomorrow 2 stories going into 1. There's a lot of that going on. So I think 50 minutes is perfect. So that's up at noon tomorrow everywhere. And you go to this podcast on Twitter. And anything else, Steve, you want to promote?
At the Case Podcast on Instagram. We've got a Facebook page. You can look that up if Facebook's more of your thing. Thecasepodcast.com is where we'll be. I think the website will be more useful once we get a few episodes in, because there's more information that we'll be able to put up, whether it's, a criminal record that we got through a public records request, or I think we've got some really, really great video that people are going to love coming down the line.
Yeah.
I would follow all of that. And if you're one of these people who listens to the podcast multiple times, do us a favor and listen to it each time on a different platform.
and leave a review. I know. It doesn't, I don't know why it matters, but I know it does matter. So leave a review. That would be helpful as well. And obviously I think we're 4th overall on iTunes right now. Last time I checked this morning or something. Let me see. Yeah. It's absolutely wild. The feedback and the numbers are unbelievable. Like I'm stunned. So I'm thrilled, and I hope people like it. And tomorrow's episode, I think, is, great. I think you guys are going to be blown away by this one. So we'll be back doing this again next week. Steve and I will be, if you're a fan of the regular show, we'll be back in studio tomorrow morning doing our show as well. Make sure to subscribe, do all that, listen. It'll be up tomorrow at noon. Thanks to Taser. And Steve, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Talk to you later, Kirk.